Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful practice and career. I am Narain Arul Raja, the founder of the Veterinary Business Podcast and one of the co-hosts. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a wide range of topics, including practice management, marketing strategies, leadership development, HR practices, and more. Whether you are a practicing veterinarian, a practice owner, or a student studying to be a veterinarian, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities in the business of veterinary medicine. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools. And please don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or other podcast platforms of your choice. We have a special guest with us today, Leslie Gallagher. She's the president and CEO of Two Hands, Four Paws. I love that name. I got some time to talk to Leslie and get to know her a little bit. She's going to be a blast. She's a passionate entrepreneur with 2 decades of experience, leading, building an awesome enterprise, awesome company, but at the same time, making the difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of pet parents and obviously pets. She's a true visionary who's kind of doing something that most people don't know they can do or think is too hard to do. So Leslie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I love talking about what we do.
Absolutely. I can definitely see it in your passion and who you are and how you live your life. The topic today is a unique journey to a vet rehab practice. A unique journey to a vet rehab practice. I have to say, Leslie is not a veterinary doctor, but has been in this space and helping, all types of animals, rehab and get better and get back to normal life. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Leslie. What got you into working with pets? Tell us your story.
Okay. So I worked as the director of international affairs for one of the wealthiest men in the world. Previous to starting this business, he was one of the 7 media moguls in the world, like Rupert Murdoch, but his business was in Spanish. So Spanish language television, media, everything that you can think of that's media, we did it in Spanish. And I had this amazing, super glamorous life. It was so much fun. I had to learn how to shoot a gun, and I learned how to drive bulletproof cars. And I flew all over the world with this man for about a decade. He had the largest contemporary art collection in the world. He had 4 private planes. He had, 250 luxury cars. He had the 2 largest private yachts in the world. And he didn't allow me to speak any English for 10 years because he said speaking English would make me lazy. When I was 22 years old, I was just a kid off a farm in Stockton, and all of a sudden I was wearing pantyhose and having to figure out how to paint my fingernails and fly all over the world with this guy. And he wanted me to interact with, presidents and kings and the Pope and, everybody that you can think of was at the highest echelons of society. So it was just, I felt like he had taken me from kindergarten to a PhD in the years that I worked for him. And I loved him, and he paid me an obscene amount of money to be at his beck and call 24/7. But he developed melanoma and he died. And it was absolutely devastating to me. He was the father I never had. And I think I stayed in bed for about a month. I was just absolutely floored by the fact that this man had gone. And I really had a hard time functioning for about at least a month, maybe more. I don't think I took a shower. I'm sure I didn't walk my dogs. I could barely drink coffee. But his wife called me after, I guess, about a month, and she said, "I really need you." And I didn't like his wife at all, but I loved him. And I knew that he would want me to help her. So because I didn't know what I was going to do, I agreed to help her. And in Los Angeles, he had left behind about 25 homes. And interestingly, actually, literally the day he died, I got calls from like 5 or 6 different billionaires that knew that he had died, asking me if I would come work for them. And I was horrified and disgusted that, I was being poached and my boss had just barely died. And I wasn't interested. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I'd socked away all the money that I had earned over the years, and I needed to grieve for a while. But his wife asked me to come help her, and by helping her, she did nothing. She was in Paris or wherever she was, and so I had to sell off the homes, the Bentleys, the crystal, the china, the art, the wine, you name it. And in one of the homes, he left behind a German Shepherd. And I kept asking his wife, "What do you want me to do with this dog?" I mean, he had 5 German Shepherds, and when we would fly on his planes, they'd be on the plane with us, and I absolutely loved it because I grew up on a farm and I always, had a ton of animals when I was a kid. So flying all over the world with a bunch of German Shepherds was super fun for me. But this was for whatever reason, when he died, 4 of the 5 shepherds were taken to Mexico City, and they left one behind. And his wife finally said, "Just euthanize her. What are you going to do? Nobody's going to want this dog." And I thought, I think I asked her what the dog's name was, and she didn't even know. And I thought, well, there's no way in hell I'm killing this beautiful dog. So I thought, okay, I'll drive her to the vet. And if she, if she has like a brain tumor, or if she's incredibly sick, I'll let her go. But otherwise, I'm not going to kill this dog. I'd already lost my boss, and she was like, he loved her. So I drove her to the vet, and the vet said this dog is suffering from severe, I would call it like clinical depression. She was super shut down. I'm like, well, that makes 2 of us. So I just brought her home with me. I wasn't going to put her down. So the wife fired me for not killing his dog, which, talk about karma. But that was fine. I didn't like her anyway. And about 3 weeks later, I took her to a groomer to get a bath. And when I picked her up, she was paralyzed. And she was like a 5 or 6-year-old German Shepherd, just as sweet as pie. I named her Sophie. And every single vet I took her to told me to euthanize her. And I was like, good grief, why does everybody want me to kill this dog? But here I am. I don't have a job. I've got this big paralyzed German Shepherd in my house. Thank God my husband's very understanding because we already had a ton of other dogs. And I took her to a neurologist. I took her to a surgeon. I took her to an acupuncturist, a chiropractor. I took her to faith healers. I mean, I would have done anything. And I literally was just carrying her around with a towel under her belly because her front legs still worked, but her back legs didn't at all. And the people who had given her the bath told me, well, I must have done it when I driven her over there that morning. And I'm like, I wasn't hit by a Mack truck on my way to her bath. What I think they just dropped her in the tub and they ruptured a disc in her back. But I didn't know what to do. And finally, my sister-in-law said, well, why don't you try swimming her? Nothing else had worked. And I was a cyclist, and one of my cyclist friends had a big swimming pool. And he said, sure, bring her over. You can try. And I'm going to say I went over there every day, and probably within 4 weeks, I had her walking again. And I
Wow.
couldn't believe there was nobody in affluent West Los Angeles that knew anything about physical therapy for dogs. It just seemed insane to me. I mean, we've got so many brilliant people in this town and so much money. And I thought, well, all right, screw it. I'm going to figure out how to do this. And if it doesn't work out, I'll go work for one of these billionaires again. But I really didn't want to. I really only enjoyed the job because I loved my boss so much. So I went to vet tech school when I was 35 years old. And then I went to human massage school to learn how to do massage techniques. And then I found a animal massage school in Colorado. And then a year or two later, an animal physical therapy school showed up in Florida. And I started volunteering for a veterinary surgeon to sort of see the cases that I'd be treating if I could actually make this career work. And I set up shop in my garage. Our garage had been turned into a little apartment, and my husband put a pool in our backyard, and we put a treadmill in the garage and got some physio balls and some lasers. And there was literally nobody in California doing this. So I was just making it up as I went along. And I did this for, I'm going to say, probably 10 or maybe 13 years before I finally had to get to a bigger space. So that was how this whole thing started.
That's fun. So when did this was started? What year was it?
It was 1998 when I started this.
So 26 years. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
And the current location you are at, when did you move into that location?
So we moved into that location, I'm going to say maybe 13 or 14 years ago. And it's also kind of a funny story. I was alone doing physical therapy on animals all this time in my backyard. And I really wanted colleagues. I wanted people I could talk to and people I could bounce ideas off of and say, hey, I've got this German Shepherd with a gracilis contracture. What do you think? How would you fix it? And one day, some competition finally came to town in the form of another veterinarian and a physical therapist. And I was so excited because I thought, oh my gosh, finally I'll have people I can collaborate with and people I can talk to. And they put in an underwater treadmill in their facility, and I had a pool. So I thought, well, perfect. I'll refer them all of my cases that need the underwater treadmill, and they can refer me the cases that just need to swim. And so they were giving a talk, and one of my friends who's a veterinary oncologist invited me to this talk. And I was so excited to meet them. And the first thing they said to me was that they were going to dedicate their entire careers to shutting me down.
Wow.
And I was just flabbergasted. And I looked at my friend and I'm like, did they just say that? So apparently they were very unhappy about my success. And I was incredibly successful. I mean, when you're the only game in town and you happen to be actually really good at what you do, my phone rang off the hook. I was busier than I could stand, and I had no overhead and I had no employees. But I was just shocked that they didn't think there was room for everybody, in this town to be doing physical therapy because there's so many people here. But it was a real sort of a bump in the road for me and kind of depressing. But
Yeah.
because of them, they turned me into the veterinary medical board and accused me of practicing medicine without a license, which was ridiculous. And then they turned me and they sent every inspector possible over to my home, and they turned me into the city of Los Angeles. I think it was for operating an illegal business in my backyard or something. And the inspector who came out was just lovely. And he said to me, I don't know who these people are that are after you, but boy, they have been driving us crazy for, 6 or 8 months now. And they cited me because I had too much activity in my backyard, and he said, you need to find, another space. You need to move out. And it was actually a blessing in disguise because I had really outgrown my backyard, even though I loved my commute. But it forced me to go get this huge, I don't know, 10,000 square foot warehouse. So what was so funny about it is they were trying to ruin my business, and they actually made me better because all of a sudden now I've got this huge space, and I started hiring all these employees, and my business exploded again. So I actually wanted to send them a thank you letter.
Thank you for making me move out of my house and do it much bigger than I'm doing.
Well, they made me more successful. It was just
Yeah,
hilarious. Exactly what they didn't want.
that's awesome. Let me kind of ask you, so how would you describe your practice? Let's say you meet somebody on an elevator and you're trying to tell them what you do. How would you describe it? I know rehab is a big portion of it, but for somebody who doesn't know anything about your practice or doesn't live in LA, like give us an overview.
So what I would say is we do physical therapy on animals almost exactly as you would receive physical therapy as a human being. So if you break your leg and you have surgery on your leg and you finally get the cast off, the doctor discharges you to physical therapy, and you may get acupuncture, you may get laser, you may get e-stim, ultrasound, TENS. You may be getting a lot of massages, you may be icing and heating, you'll probably get some home exercises. Every single thing that you get as a human being for physical therapy is what we do for animals. And it's not just dogs, we do cats, we've done a lot of wild animals, we've done a bunch of wolves. But because of that, because we have been so successful and just feel like we just keep growing and growing and growing, what has happened is, we specialize in disabled dogs, and obviously paralyzed dogs are a big part of our practice. But people leave those animals at our facility when they can't handle them. The dog's paralyzed, the dog's incontinent. And I would just take them in and fix them and then try to place them. And then I realized, there's another niche here. There are so many animals that are disabled and dropped off at shelters. They've been hit by a car. They've got a broken leg. They're on the euthanasia list, that I then created a foundation to take in these animals. I raised tons of money. I think I'm up to probably $900,000 by now, maybe more. And we take in these animals and we fix them and we place them. So I have two co-businesses, the for-profit where I take in, client dogs, and then the nonprofit where I take in disabled dogs. So it's a pretty big practice.
That's awesome. I was going to say, one of my aunts recently, maybe 3 months ago, was admitted to the ICU. She had, she couldn't breathe, without support, and then 2 months, and then they sent her to a rehab once she was
Yeah,
getting better. And it was like 3 weeks, and literally they're like, okay, we won't let you go home till you can climb stairs and do all the things you need to do to go home
right.
and live properly. So that was again 2 to 3 weeks process. Is it kind of like that? Is it like soup to nuts? There's a sick dog, and then you get it back to just being able to live a normal life. Is that
Exactly. That's
okay?
exactly what we do. So a lot of dogs board with us when they're just had a big surgery and there's no way their owners can handle them. And I have a lot of compassion for those people because Sophie, my first, my boss's German Shepherd, was down and paralyzed and incontinent, and I was all by myself, and I didn't have anybody, other than my husband helping me. So we've got a whole team that takes care of these animals, and usually what we'll say to them, or what they'll say to us is, I don't want my dog back until he can walk, or I don't want my dog back until he can urinate on his own. I don't want my dog back until I feel like he can navigate a flight of stairs. And so we keep them with us until they're at that point. And I actually have a funny story. I had one client with a tiny little dog that kept changing the parameters. He'd say, I want him back when he can stand up. And I got him standing. And he said, okay, well, now I don't want him back until he can walk. I'm like, okay, now he's walking. And then he said, I don't want him back until he can lift his leg to urinate. And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be fun. So I tied a TheraBand to his foot. And every time I would take him out to urinate, I would lift the leg with a TheraBand to retrain those muscles so that he could pick his leg up and abduct it out to the side. And then the guy came back and I said, okay, he could lift his leg now. And he's like, I guess I don't have any other excuses, do I? I'm like, nope, take your dog.
That's awesome. Um, are the kind of people that you hire different from those that would work in a regular practice?
I would say so. I think a lot of people tend to get really burned out right now in the field of veterinary medicine. Since the pandemic, everybody's lost their minds, and clients have become so difficult, and hospitals have had to hire security. And what I see from my end, we're very different in that, you're not bringing an emergency into us. You're not bringing us a dog that has just been hit by a car. Rehab doesn't get emergencies hardly ever. But the kind of people that are attracted to this field, I think, are people that have so much compassion that being in a hospital can sometimes almost be too much, because I know this from my years of working for the surgeon, and people, there's a lot of economic euthanasia. I can't afford it, just put the dog down. And for those of us in the back, it's like, oh no, it's a 3-year-old dog with a broken leg and they're going to
Yeah.
euthanize. And you get so sad and grief stricken when you're in those practices all the time. So I think people gravitate towards physical therapy because everybody pretty much gets better. And even if we can't, and nobody's going to live forever, we can give them the last best weeks, months, years of their lives. So it tends to be people that are insanely compassionate and very, very caring, very, very giving. I mean, my staff will be, carrying around these animals all day long and, snuggling with them, taking them home on the weekends. I have staff that come in on their days off to hang out with our foundation dogs or some of the dogs that are boarding with us that just need more TLC. So I think rehab tends to attract the most compassionate people in the field. And interestingly, our clientele, I would say, are the top 5% of animal owners, because these are people that will go to the absolute extra mile to take care of their animals, as opposed to, I remember vividly a little poodle that had been brought into the practice when I was working for the surgeon to be euthanized because the family kept giving him pizza and he kept throwing up and having diarrhea. And the owner said, I'm just sick to death of this dog crapping on my Persian carpets. And the vet euthanized him. And, we don't see that kind of clientele. We see people that will be, doing everything under the sun to take care of their dogs until, it's finally time for that talk about quality of life. So it does tend to attract a very special kind of person that works in rehab.
So it's kind of interesting. So you, on one hand, you have amazing pet parents, right? The ones who will do anything for their pets. I guess these are the ideal parents, pet parents that any vet practice would want. But on the other hand, it's a tough job, right? It could be months and months of work taking care of one
Absolutely.
pet and turning things around. So do the people who work at your practice a lot of burnout, or usually they're long term? I'm just trying to understand from a psychological perspective, what would this do to a person in that environment?
I don't tend to see burnout. I would say there's a lot of grief when we lose an animal that we've absolutely loved and we've been caring for years.
Yeah,
But we're all seasoned professionals and we've all seen a lot. So I think there's just a ton of compassion, but I honestly don't see that much burnout. It's pretty rare.
right,
Our clients don't tend to be, the hideous and badly behaved and difficult and, don't want to pay their bills. It tends to be a much nicer clientele. So I feel like my staff get a lot out of taking care of these animals because everybody feels like they're really making a difference. And we
right.
get those letters and those emails all the time from the clients saying, I can't thank you enough. My God, your team's amazing. And my dog got the best 6 months of her life because of you. So it's really rewarding.
Right. And most of them come from a regular vet practice, so they know that, 3-year-old puppy who's being put down because the parent doesn't want to, go through with the expenses or whatever, right? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it makes total sense. Not many people, in fact, nobody was on a journey like yours. This is like, the way it started, it's kind of, nutty, right? It's just I just, it's like out of a movie, like out of a Hollywood movie. So what advice do you have for people who wish to embark on their own journey? Let's say, they are halfway through their career, early in their career, burnt out, whatever it is, but they just want to do something else. What's your take? What's your advice?
If they want to stay in the veterinary field, I would say get trained up in a different aspect of veterinary medicine if you're really burned out on medicine that you're doing right now. For me, I found a niche and I filled it. And I'm pretty fearless and, I love to talk to people and I love to help. So it wasn't a hard journey for me at all. But I have a lot of compassion for people who are struggling and trying to find some other area of veterinary medicine that might not be so challenging. Um, but I would say, network, network, network. Talk to everybody. Everybody knows somebody who's looking for somebody to work for them. I would, get on the internet. I would get on LinkedIn. I would get on Facebook and just start networking with people to try to find your niche in the world. I don't know if that answered your question
Yeah, I mean,
adequately.
your life reminds me of the movie uh, Forrest Gump and his philosophy of, like, life is a box of chocolates. I mean, you go looking for this business, you didn't even have anything to do with veterinary medicine, right?
Not
It
at
just
all. Not at
just
all.
landed on you. This dog just landed on you, and your love for that, that person you work for and his dog changed your life pretty much.
Completely. And I think he sent me this from the grave because he knew how much I loved animals. We had a really formal relationship. I always joked I don't even think he knew my last name, but I know he knew I loved animals. And I'm convinced that somewhere he sent me this dog and he sent me this career because I wanted to be a vet when I was a kid. I grew up on a farm, and I
Right.
lived right near UC Davis, but I failed every math and science class I ever took. There was no way in hell I was going to get into vet school. So I did it completely differently and it's worked phenomenally. I absolutely love what I do. And I love preaching animal physical therapy because it's just super rewarding.
So do you like take one step at a time? I bet when you were trying to save this pet, this dog, that's all you're thinking about. And then when you did this thing in your house, you didn't think beyond it till an inspector showed up and said, "Get out,"
Oh boy, the clock was ticking then. It was so easy. I mean, that's what's kind of funny. I'm sure I just had a ton of luck, but the surgeon that I was just volunteering in his practice to see, the cases that I was going to be treating. My phone rang off the hook because he sent me all these cases, and it was really, really easy. And I happened to have, a knack for it, and obviously I love animals. So it was very easy for me until that inspector came to town. And he told me that legally, it was really funny. He told me he had to fine me $500 a day for every day that I stayed in my backyard continuing to work. And I'm going to say that was in August, and we didn't actually get a building and, a permitted in and, starting to move in until about February. So the bill was going to be, tens of thousands of dollars. And I called him and I said, we finally got, our premises permit, we're in. And he said, great, I'm not going to tell anybody. Good job for you. Keep me posted. He didn't fine me. He didn't do anything because he said, who are these people that are after you? And I said, oh, it's my competition. They've showed up at my house. They've defaced our cars. They've defaced my property. They've harassed my staff. And he said, I'm not going to do anything. You just go do what you do. And good luck to you, young lady.
That's awesome.
Oh.
So given the labor challenges that people are having in the veterinary industry right now, how is your practice able to, not only survive, but thrive? And plus, you're not a veterinary doctor, so it's kind of interesting, right? So I think you started answering it, but I want to hear your full answer on this topic. You talked about, people who have compassion, who want to make a difference. The fact that these parents, are the top 10% parents, they're willing to do whatever it takes for their pets. But is there anything else that you think in your culture, the way you think about things, the way you do things, that works in your favor?
I think it all comes down to who's running the show at the top. And because I have so much passion for what I do, and I'm typically a really happy person, I'm always laughing, I'm always joking. I tend to, I've got a pretty buoyant personality. And I think, that draws people in, the fact that I love what I do and I'm pretty good at it. And I've, trained a million people and I've put everybody through school. So I think, if you sort of have a little bit of a gift and you love to be with people and you love to chat with people and to nurture people and to empower people, I make an effort to mentor everybody that I can. And I make it a requirement that every single person that works for me has to go to rehab school and acupuncture school for the veterinarians. So I've created a really loyal team of people that are so grateful to have been given, a completely different career that didn't really exist for a long time. And so everybody is so well trained and so skilled that I think it just creates a loyalty. And I mean, certainly we've had people that had to leave for all kinds of reasons. My husband got a job in Texas, I'm pregnant and my husband wants to move to Northern California. I mean, definitely that has happened. And it has been a struggle. There have been times when it's been a struggle. I had one employee get a huge offer to go to another practice in San Diego, and the $100,000 signing bonuses, and we can't compete with that because rehab doesn't make the kind of money that the Banfields and the VCAs do. But I think people are really attracted to our culture and the environment that we have. We have, a no gossip policy. It's a very, very positive place. And I also think that most people don't want to work for the big corporations. Nobody, no offense to all those big hospitals, but they get a bad rap. The VCAs, the Banfields, the MVAs, the Mars Company. And I think so many veterinarians are tired of the big corporations coming in and, putting the prices up really high and knocking down salaries for the staff that aren't veterinarians. And I think a lot of people are really attracted to working for sort of a mom and pop company where you can do whatever you want. There's no holds barred. I'm pretty loose and easy with whatever anybody wants to do. So I think it's just created a really nice culture for an awful lot of people. So I tend to not lose staff like probably a lot of hospitals do.
Absolutely. You do have quite a few veterinarians who work for you too, right? What is it that attracts them to come and work for you?
Probably all of the above, what I just said. I think they would tell you that it is their ability to make a difference. Um, and I'm all about pain management. In fact, I'm obsessed with it. And I think a lot of people in our industry feel like they aren't able to do enough to manage an animal's pain, and especially educating the owner on the fact that just because an animal isn't screaming doesn't mean they're suffering. So I think the ability to have so many tools to manage pain is really attractive to my team, and the ability to have complete autonomy. You know, they've all been put through school, they've all been educated. Every one of us mentors and trains because I trained my entire staff, and now they can help train the new ones coming in. So I think there's just an awful lot of flexibility. It's not a 9 to 5 job at all, but I think they appreciate the autonomy probably more than anything else, that they can do a great job and they're rewarded emotionally for that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Leslie. I had tons of fun talking to you today. I think you are like a one of a kind. So
Thank
appreciate
you.
appreciate the opportunity and appreciate you doing this for our listeners. So I had a lot of fun. The topic today, once again, is a unique journey to a vet rehab practice. Any final comments?
No, I'm so grateful to be here. And if anybody wants to get into the field of rehab, please contact me. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to mentor. If anybody is interested in starting their own practice, call me. I can help you avoid, all the stupid things that I did when I first started out. I'm happy to be a resource for people. And if anybody obviously on the West Coast want to come and see our practice, it's super busy and super fun. We can see anywhere from 50 to 70 animals a day. We have a huge swimming pool and fun swim. So come by if you want to come see us in action. Anybody and everybody's invited.
I might even take you up on it and fly across country and come see you.
You'll
Just to
love
hang
it.
out, just to hang out with you and see what you're doing. I also want to take a minute to thank all of our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. We cannot do what we do without you. If you like our podcast, please share it with your colleagues and friends on social media, and please don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews will help other doctors and practice owners find us. Till we meet again next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and pet parents.